Hello, and welcome to another edition of the It's Time to Lead Different live stream podcast. My name is Colin Daly. I'm the CEO of the Circle Leader and the North American lead for Circle Leadership Global. And today I will be flying solo again. Today, what I thought we would do is maybe spend a few minutes and talk about more of the personal side of being an entrepreneur, of being a business owner, being a leader, and um, what are some of the challenges and obstacles and some of the opportunities that we have as human beings in leadership positions um, to struggle with and to overcome and to grow into. And I was actually inspired for this conversation by a couple of conversations I've had already today with entrepreneurs who are in the trenches, like many of you are, and who are really passionately working and diligently working toward the achievement of their goals and the realization of their vision, and finding themselves sort of stuck from a personal perspective in how to move forward. Sometimes a couple of expressions that they gave me. There sometimes it feels like the business is asking for too much, and they that it's that what they really value in their own sort of world is some novelty and some the ability to sort of explore new ideas, and what seems to be happening is the business is kind of forcing them into structured uh, activities, and kind of focuses them on what the priorities that it demands rather than what they are setting for themselves. And and there's a level of personal frustration, right, and resistance that sort of comes in there. And then, of course, all of the cultural shoulds, right, and how all the the gurus really will focus on what we should be doing and how we should be doing it, and that if we just had a better routine, or if we just optimized our approach, or we just got the that next system in place, or found that unicorn co-founder, or CTO, or name the position, right, that suddenly everything would be unlocked for us. And any of us who have been in business for any length of time realize there is no magic bullet. There's no magic pill, no silver bullet. There is no one thing that's going to change everything, right? uh, the only thing that and really in the end, right, the only thing that we really control is our response to what's actually happening in the world. And but sometimes, right, we get flooded. The zone gets flooded, so to speak, with challenge and difficulty, and the necessities, the priorities of the day, which the business is demanding of us. And I guess the question, if any of you have ever experienced that, then you know what I'm talking about in your own unique sort of space and world. You know how sometimes how difficult that can be, and how it can lead to really challenges with depression and anxiety, and really sort of being captive sometimes to our fears, and then how that can bleed into our relationships, our personal relationships. And I've actually never discovered a business leader who is kind of going through this this level of crisis, or this in a situation where things are really challenging, and potentially looking dire, that isn't having some sort of interpersonal relationship issue, right, with spouses or children or friends, or at the very least with partners and investors, right? There's personal conflict that comes up, and which sometimes feels like it compounds the problem, because the business and your customers and vendors and employees are demanding of you, and now those seemingly closest to you, who are there to support you or you rely on their support, suddenly are pulling the rug out from under you as well. So it's all that to be so that that is the path that many of us find ourselves on, and more than once in our careers probably. If you've been in business and have been in the leadership space any length of time. So the question that kind of want to pose here is, how do we deal with that? What are some of the ways that we can, as leaders, get some space and give ourselves that grace to be able to move through these difficult times, without breaking stuff, without creating more challenge, more difficulty in our worlds or in our businesses. There's a lot of times, as I mentioned before, this is my recognition that there's so much, virtually everything outside of myself, outside of what I personally can do, that is out of my control. And so as life and business and situations unfold, right? The question isn't, the question should be for me is, how do I allow that to unfold, and then how do I respond with the most grace and the most acceptance and the most optimism and possibility thinking as I can muster. And I recognize, and I totally um, am in the same situation as you are many times, that in some of those situations it doesn't feel like there's any optimism or positivity, but what I've discovered is that with a little bit of work on our own inner world and how we process and organize our thinking, that we can actually, that we're literally only one thought away from feeling better. It doesn't necessarily mean everything's fixed. We can't just change one thought and suddenly be completely, from depressed to completely happy. That's not the way it works. I totally recognize that, and I do know for personal experience that when I shift my thinking slightly, it allows me a little bit more of a perspective on what's actually happening, and it also gives me an opportunity to explore what's possible. And from there, I can actually, inch my way forward into accepting what's actually happening, and then taking the necessary action I need to take that I can take. And I want to be crystal clear there. And the necessary action that is mine to take, and allow others to take the action that they need to take in order to move through whatever situation or challenge or crisis that we're going through. So, and when I do, actually, the outcome tends to be more positive than I feared. And sometimes when I'm holding on so tight and I'm trying to do everything and I'm trying to control all the different outcomes, that's when when my expectations are not met, and I let people down, or the situation lets me down to a degree that I even feel worse than when we started. So the process here that I'd like to share with you. A couple of weeks ago, I think I shared a process around how to reframe the judgments we have of ourselves. Here I'd like to help us recognize that when we're faced with challenging and difficult situations, which we will be as leaders and as business owners, it's inevitable. It cannot be avoided. The marketplace, our teams, our vendors, the economy, everything is and as we know now, is like in constant uncertainty and constant flux. The question is, how do I organize myself, and how can you organize your own inner world so that so that it goes through rather than get stuck within you? And when I say goes through, I mean that you can process it without it creating, without it debilitating you, right, or creating chaos in your world. And the first thing I'd like to suggest is that the way we and this is really central to the circle leadership process, which is to recognize how human behavior is developed, right? And that fundamentally, right, it's our thinking that actually drives our behavior, which then ultimately drives our results and the outcomes or the success or the non-success have you that we experience. So if you trace that back, right, there's the layer of thinking, right, that's really critical to understand. And what I suggest is that we start thinking about and start analyzing right now. Hopefully, you're not in a crisis mode, but start analyzing what are those habits of thought that that when you do feel anxious, when you do feel frustrated, when you do feel depressed, right? What are the habits of thought that are attendant with that? Because feelings are always downstream of your thought processes. And think about, like, what is it that is fairly routine? What has become a habit for you, to be thinking? And at first, it might just be that you can start to identify themes or directional feeling, because you can trace back from your feeling to what you're thinking. And I would encourage you to do that. And as you practice this a little bit more, you're going to start to actually see or hear the thoughts that are coming to your mind, that are ultimately creating these feelings. And you can start to recognize, oh, look at that, there's a thought, like, you know um, things always break, or I can't rely on so and so, right? These sort of reoccurring thoughts might come up over and over again. And as you identify those, right, you can start to recognize them as what they are, just a thought, and not necessarily reality, right? And even if they are attached to something that you perceive as real, you can recognize still that moment in time is still just literally a thought, and not what's actually happening. But what's happening within you and within your mind is literally a thought versus an actual physical event. And that distinction, I think, is really critical, because you can, what I said earlier, I have found, and I would suggest as you practice this, you'll be able to get some perspective and a little bit of space in between, who you feel you are and what you are thinking and perceiving, right? And so you can, if you can, start to become more objective about what's actually happening in your perception, and what thoughts are sort of emerging from that, and then how that's making you feel physically, and maybe even what actions you're taking habitually without even thinking about it. And you can start to replace some of those with alternatives, right? So you can recognize, though, this thought is literally just a thought, and it's as easy to manufacture another thought. Super simple, right? We know how to think, and we have to do is take our amazing miracle mind and body and point it at something, right? And as leaders and entrepreneurs, we know how to focus. That's one of our key strengths, right? And we know how to actually pay attention to what's actually happening. And when we do that, uh, a miracle, we can actually pay attention. We can choose what we pay attention to, right? So do I choose to pay attention to that thought that's creating this negative feeling, which maybe is leading toward a negative behavior that might create chaos or lead me into a darker place? Or at that moment, when I recognize that thought or those thought processes, right, the habitual thought process, can I shift? Can I focus on something else? Maybe move from, let's just say, lack and limitation, that point of view and vision of, thoughts that are focused on, what's not going to happen, what's going to break, and why it's so bad and horrible, to a possibility frame of reference, like what could possibly be. And even to ask a different, I find actually a lot of times it's not just change my, I can change my focus instantaneously by asking myself a different question. And really, I think I've actually heard Tony Robbins say this decades ago, but the quality of our experience is directly related to the quality of the question that we ask ourselves. And if we can ask ourselves a better question, we actually can shift our focus instantaneously. So, I would suggest here is that simple process, right, of shifting our focus away from, or slightly adjacent to. I'm not saying here that, hey, magically stop thinking negatively and start thinking positively, right? I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about literally minute incremental changes, recognizing that what we think directly impacts how we feel, and how we feel directly impacts how we behave, and how we behave directly impacts the results that we realize, that we see in the world, that we experience in the world, right? And so literally this is an inside out proposition, not an outside in proposition. It really doesn't matter what's happening outside of us. It really matters what's happening inside of us. And the way that we respond to what's happening is literally what's in our control. And what I'm suggesting here is, fundamentally, when you get right down to it, it's this process of incrementally shifting, right? Moving from that over here to this, from an idea, a thought, um, a belief, a way of seeing the world that creates naturally and it must, by its own nature, create negative feelings, which create negative behaviors, which create negative results. We can shift to a slightly more useful, right, positive, energetic, possibility focus, and that will lead us to feelings of more energy, more possibility, more inspiration, which will lead us to actions that are more positive, which will lead us to results that are more positive. Again, no magic pill, no silver bullet. Nobody's riding in on a horse and is going to save us, from our own. But I get the opportunity to work this process internally, and as I do, I find that I feel more stable, more balanced, more equanimity, more well-being in myself, even though at the moment, right, there might be chaos happening out there. As I exercise this level of sort of internal maneuvering, right, that I have space to maneuver, even when I feel like the world or my business or the economy or my vendors, right, or my investors have taken away all my ability to maneuver. I can still maneuver within myself, within my interiority. And if I recognize that really the ultimate results come from within me out into the world and reflect back to me, it's not the other way around, right? When I do that, I have a sense of power. And so, that helps me feel less depressed, less put upon, less resentful, less angry, less fatigued and tired. And it gives me the opportunity to, lean into more energy, more optimism, more possibility. And, when I'm in that state, I can actually ask for help. I can actually, gain some perspective to maybe ask a different question. What could work? And for those of you who've had coaches, right, and probably been frustrated by the question they ask, well, because they ask you a question, you say, well, it can't be done, and they say, well, what if it could be done? What would you do? And that does force us to shift our thinking. That question alone forces us to shift and think, well, okay, if, right, if it were possible, this is what would need to be done. And if you think about it, just kind of play with that engagement, that question, that thought process for a moment, and test yourself. Doesn't that actually give you that sense of energy that leans toward possibility, versus the lack and limitation, or non-possibility, right? Um, and again, I'm only going from my own personal experience and the experience I see with my clients and the people I know, the people I love. I know when I do that, it changes things dramatically in my world, and I would highly recommend that play with that and have some fun with it, because in the end, and I tell most of the people I work with, right, I help us make a distinction, right, that the life we live, the experience of our business, the experience of our life is all internal. 100% of the experience of what's actually going on is internal here. And if I have responsibility over that, which I do, then I can choose something different, right? I can choose more positive energy versus negative energy. I can choose possibility over lack and limitation. I can choose I can choose to pause and slow down over rushing into chaos. I can choose asking for advice from trusted advisors. I can choose a different path, and that's the thing. The power of this comes from that internal responsibility. Um, I am not responsible for everything that happens in the world, but I am responsible for what happens within me, and that responsibility is liberation, right? When I fully embrace it. And if I can, share that idea with you as a leader, as a business person, right? How do you actually deal with and manage through really difficult circumstances? Just suggest that you have the power. You can do it, and it's not as hard as you think, or maybe that you're telling yourself it is. And you do not need to be perfect. I want to be super crisp about that. You do not need to be perfect. All you need to do is be aware. All you need to do is start paying attention, and incrementally, right, as you do this incrementally, you form a new habit, and that new habit will lead you in the direction of creation, right, versus desperation. So um, anyway, I wanted to share that with you. It's been an interesting topic, sort of flowing through a lot of the conversations I've been having with my clients and my fellow entrepreneurs recently, and recognize that we're human beings, just like our teams are human beings, and that we need to pay attention and take care of ourselves as well, so that we can actually be the best that we can possibly be for our teams. Dave Clare, my partner at Circle Leadership Global, as CEO, he always says that as leaders, we need to be willing to go first so that our teams can go further. And it really is about how far and how deeply we're willing to go do the work that will demonstrate for our teams, and give the room for our teams to be able to follow our lead and to really be those leaders. Leadership is not what I'm kind of living into. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about demonstrating energetically, emotionally, right, how to be a leader. And when we're in the presence of leaders, right, we want to follow, right, we want to collaborate, we want to engage, and we want to fall in love. And when we fall in love, right, then magic happens. And I would really suggest that the more we do the work internally as leaders, the more we will fall in love with ourselves. And that is possible. No matter what, it is possible for us to fall in love more deeply with ourselves. And that will then lead us to falling in love with our people, and through them and by them and with them, falling in love with our customers and our vendors. And that agape love, that brotherly love, that a purposeful love will create for us ongoing prosperity. And as we encounter hurdles and obstacles and challenges, it's in that environment that we'll overcome and transform and transcend versus being dragged down. So that's the message I have for you today. I hope that you can glean one idea or two, maybe practice some of that, and see what happens in your world. As you do, I would love to hear from you. And if you'd like to go deeper into how to, maybe apply some of these ideas in your leadership practice, reach out to me on the socials. And until next week, I wish you all the best, and hope that that as you come into those struggles and challenges, that you can find that inner strength and refocus your attention and find the solution that's right for you. So, thank you very much for spending some time with me today. I look forward to connecting with you again in the future. And until then, take care.